Good morning. Welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church, a community of youth, adults, and children sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Cecilia Dodge, she, her, and I'm a member of our board of directors. To share a request for today's meditation, please place it in the chat box before the opening hymn or add it to our meditation bowl. Please gain consent before you use someone's full name. The meditation bowl is in the Soul Work Center, along with some activities to help people of all ages engage with today's service. It's wonderful today to have our beloved OK Factor, Olivia Dirks and Carla Colohan, share the sermon with synesthesia visual artist Sarah Koenig. Together, they will explore improvisation in music, art, and life. Sarah experiences sound as colors, movement, and texture. She grew up in Mahtomedi and White Bear Lake. Her artwork has been featured in the Guggenheim Museum magazine, Beatles magazine, and Wired magazine, among others. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you, Olivia and Carla, for your beautiful music. Welcome to our church, where together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anybody other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place together. We make it a holy place. I'm Reverend Roger, and my pronouns are he, him.
Good morning. My name is Kathy McComber, and I use she, her pronouns. I brought a visual aid today. I'm intrigued by the focus of today's service, improvisation in music and the visual arts. The linkage between improvisation, experimentation, bending and stretching the rules of what came before, and innovation. Many of us improvise when cooking. Rather than just reheating leftovers, what could we create from them? A omelet, hash, a hot dish? My favorite personal improvisational story happened in 2020. Like many who sew, I had made hundreds of face masks in the early days of the pandemic. These were donated to hospitals where they were provided to visitors to ensure a sufficient supply of medical masks for medical personnel. This project left me with lots and lots of scraps, too small for a mask. So I set out to make myself a COVID quilt. As I assembled it, unanticipated patterns formed, and the result was interesting and kind of cohesive. As I quilted the project, partway through, I began to quilt quotes in script. It evolved into a cathartic and humorous quilt for me, an improvisational quilt. Thank you. I'll have it back in the fellowship hall if you need a closer look. We will soon be adapting and improvising as we continue our communal journey with Reverend Jessica. Much as we will miss the wisdom and humor of Reverend Roger, I'm excited about the next evolution of WBUUC. Today, we light the chalice to celebrate the joy of improvisation and creativity.
Please join me in the opening words, which we'll do in unison. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our opening hymn is in the large gray hymnal. It's 322, not 332, 322. And this is a newish hymn, I believe, for here. So Laura is going to play it through once so we can hear the melody. And after that, I invite everyone to rise in body or spirit, wherever you are, and join in singing. And we will do all 5 verses, so we'll really get to learn this hymn. So, take it away, Laura.
Good morning. My name is Amy and my pronouns are she, her, and this morning's story is adapted from Orlando Brugnola's Whose Reality Is It Anyway? This story is an invitation to risk, imagination, and improvisation, an invitation into yes and as you listen, I hope that you will lean into that invitation with a breath and imagine yourself into the story. Who do you identify with? What do you wonder? You'll also notice that when we end this storytelling moment, we will end on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and this is on purpose. It's an unanswered invitation, but don't worry, the story today will be told in 2 parts, so you will get somewhat of an ending. We'll come back to that later in the service. But we start for now. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was an average, perfectly ordinary town. In fact, everything about this town was ordinary, except for one thing. There was a storyteller in this town. The storyteller had just arrived one day without any advanced notice. There had been no invitation, no request. The storyteller just showed up, took in a great, big, deep breath, and went about constructing a giant sign inviting all people, anyone, everyone, to come and listen to the stories. And the storytelling began. There would be forests with huge and sometimes strange trees and mossy rocks, and rivers with golden fish swimming. And there would be talking tigers and a sly fox and wise turtles and a tall blue mountain peak with snow at the top and a wonderful magical city nestled in its slopes. And all the children listening to the stories wanted to listen forever because the stories just made them feel so amazed and happy. And they wanted to share their amazement and happiness with the rest of their families and anyone who would listen. And so they asked the storyteller if they could take part of the story home with them. And the answer was always, yes, of course. And so they did. Look at what the storyteller gave me, the children would exclaim. But the elders would just reply, you can't have that in the house. Tigers are much too loud. The turtles are too big. The rocks are too mossy. And that snow will melt all over this house. Take it back. And so the children went back to the storyteller with their heads hung low. Our families won't let us bring anything home from the stories. Please help us, they said. The storyteller thought and thought about how to help the children of this very ordinary town. The next day, something began happening in the town that got everyone talking. Things just started showing up in unexpected places. A big tree right in the middle of the street, a kind tiger at the post office, a wise turtle at the breakfast table, and a huge blue mountain at the front door of a house. Nobody knew what was going on, but they were pretty sure they knew who was responsible. And so the townspeople went to the mayor to plead their case. You have to do something about this storyteller. This storyteller has turned our entire town and our lives upside down. And so the mayor marched right over to the storyteller's house and knocked on the door. Yes, came a kind voice from inside. This has got to stop, said the mayor angrily. What has to stop? Asked the voice from inside innocently. All these things, these inconvenient things that are showing up everywhere, said the mayor. You don't like them? Asked the voice, sounding a little surprised. Are you kidding? Shouted the mayor. Today I couldn't even get into my own house because there was a big blue mountain in front of the door. Well, why don't you just go through it? Asked the voice. Go through it? It's a mountain. It's made of rock. What do you mean, go through it? But it's just a story mountain, said the voice. All you have to do is enter the story. It's so simple. Just enter the story.
Today, our special collection goes to a courageous, daring, and radical organization that is educating and empowering Afghan girls and women to become leaders for a peaceful and united Afghanistan. SOLA stands for School of Leadership Afghanistan. SOLA resisted the Taliban refusal to allow education for girls by starting a school in Kabul in 2016. In 2021, when the US military withdrew and the Taliban took over, the school moved to Rwanda and continued its work. SOLA is educating hundreds of girls and young women from 28 of the 34 Afghanistan provinces in a Rwanda boarding school. At SOLA, the students become members of the generation who will one day lead a peaceful and united Afghanistan. Please give generously to support the education and empowerment of these courageous and promising young women. With your help, WBUUC truly does international work. We'll pass the baskets now, but you can also give in 3 other ways. Online using Breeze, by check mailed to the church office or put in the church office lockbox, or text to give. Whichever way you give, please indicate the keyword SOLA, S-O-L-A. Thank you for your generosity and support.
As we gather today with maybe 110 people in this room and 34 households on Zoom, let's take a moment to ground ourselves in awareness and gratitude and prayer. And so, whether you're here or in another space, I invite you to bring awareness to your surroundings. Take a moment to take in the sights and the sounds around. And then shift your awareness to within yourself. What feelings and thoughts are at the forefront this morning? And this is just a moment of paying attention. You don't have to do anything about whatever feelings or thoughts you have. Just notice. Sit with them for a moment. I invite you now to be aware of anything big or small in your life for which you're grateful this morning. Now let's hold in prayer all those who are suffering. We pray and send healing energy to those in the congregation and beyond our physical and virtual walls who are struggling with mental and physical illness, with addiction, grief, poverty, oppression, or any other forms of suffering. And this morning, within our community, we especially hold Louise Pardee and her family. Louise is in hospice care at Serenity Senior Care in White Bear Lake. We hold Barb Street, who broke 5 ribs and fractured a wrist a month ago. She is healing well and this weekend transitioning back to living at home. We wish her continued good healing. And for Norm Barrett Wilk, we pray for Norm's dad, who has shingles, that he may feel better. And Diane Carlson asks that we include prayers for her beloved brother. And I invite you now to name into this space or within your heart, name aloud or silently, any people that you are especially holding in love today. Amen.
Well, good morning, everybody. This feels very strange. I just think I need to name that. I'm Olivia. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm sharing the sermon today with you. Who are you?
Amazing. Can you hear me now? Yes. Perfect. Improvisation, right? Just, making it work. I'm Carla Colahan. My pronouns are she, her, and we have an improvised sermon for you on, well, half of a sermon. Sarah's going to do the other half on improvisation and what it has meant to us and what we have done with it and what we believe.
So we're going to be a little conversational, and I hope you'll forgive us for that, but it just feels more natural, and I think that's better. So we both grew up playing these instruments from a very young age, and really started writing music together 10 years ago now. And you studied improvisation a little bit formally, more so in college than anything else, but a little bit in high school.
With a saxophone player.
Yeah. I did not. I did not study formally at all. But we've kind of come to, at least in the OK Factor, really recognize the importance of improvisation, especially for string players. It's not something that we are traditionally taught in the Western classical tradition anyway. And we feel like that does students a disservice, mostly because improvisation to us has allowed us to explore our unique musical voices. And that's something we felt like we couldn't fully do in the Western classical tradition. And that's just us. I think others feel a real connection to that style of music and are able to express themselves through notes on a page, through kind of predetermined soundscapes, if you will. And I think we've found that we just feel more able to express ourselves with kind of a lack of boundaries, without a lack of set rules and regulations. But we've come to learn that it's something we have to practice. It doesn't necessarily come naturally for everybody. And I think there's this real misconception that improvisation is just bestowed upon one, and you're either good at it or you're not, and it's just instantly you go and you have a 500-mile-an-hour solo, and think saxophone player in the jazz world. I think we all kind of, at least I, assume that that's how it goes, and we have found otherwise. Yeah.
Well, we often tell students that when we're working with them on improvisation to split up what it is that we're doing. So we're playing notes and we're playing rhythm at the same time. We'll practice each of them separately, and then when we put them together, that's often the moment where they feel like, oh, I have to do that 500-mile-an-hour solo. And we encourage them to keep it simple, silly, just really keep it simple, especially at the beginning when you're starting to get to know your own musical voice outside of the page, when you're discovering how comfortable you actually can be on your instrument without not necessarily the crutch, but just the support of, black and white notes on a page. I will also say that improvisation, while it can be simple, it also leaves room for complexity. And I find that beautiful, that there is space for the simple and there is space for the complex, and both can coexist. I think it's a matter of, for us anyway, how you choose to treat your improvisation that really helps you define your own musical voice. So I'm thinking when this past March we went to a string conference and we started improvising with, jamming with some other musicians, and it was kind of like a competition, like who could play more fast, who could be more complex, who can, quote more musicians or quote other solos or quote this and that. And we were kind of like, what's the point?
Well,
we're just showing off at that point.
Yeah, and I think you're highlighting too, Kathy talked about in the chalice lighting how we all kind of improvise likely multiple times a day, even if we don't think about it, whether it's in cooking or I'm going to take a different route because there's an accident on the highway, or I don't know. I mean, there's so many ways I think that we improvise without even being aware of it. But I think, we talk about it being a process of developing and honing your unique musical voice or your spoken voice, which clearly we haven't done very well, whatever it may be. But I think we also have found that improvising in community or in collaboration feels best to us. It's one thing to do it alone and to practice it and to hone and get better and kind of figure out what it is, how it sounds, how it feels to you, but it feels empty if that's all it ever is. And so what we found is that sharing it with others, putting it in the context of a larger piece, accompanying, we teach students how to accompany one another while they're improvising so that it's not just an inward thing, that you can really share it and experience it with other people, which I think is how we found it to be most meaningful.
It's a part of a larger conversation. And our improvisation has often led to, the creation of tunes, practiced improvisation, things that we've come to say over and over and over again in our music. And I think that is another specifically beautiful thing about improvisation, that the more that you practice it, the more you get comfortable with your own musical voice, but you can also begin to compose, whatever your medium is, you can begin to leave your legacy kind of in a way through the practice of improvisation. And that's something really special that I think we hold on to as a part of this musical improvisational thing.
The last thing I'll say is that we just got back from a tour in Sweden for 10 days, and we got back on Friday, and our luggage never arrived. So talk about improvisation. We went 10 days abroad with no luggage, and we got some jeans and a couple t-shirts and made it work. And so I'm proud of us.
Good job.
Yeah. We did it. Oh my. Just had to sneak that in there.
Well, it was really improvisatory of you and on point. Well done.
But our improvisation and music has led us to, like we said, collaborating with many different people, musicians and otherwise. And one person that we've met along the way is Sarah. And we're so glad that you're here and that we can share this morning with you. And we'll let you take it away.
All right, well, it's working. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Sarah Craning, and as was mentioned, I'm an abstract artist with synesthesia. So by show of hands, how many people have heard of synesthesia before? Oh my gosh, okay, this is the most I've ever seen in a room. Wouldn't have asked that question, that's really fun. So for those that don't know, synesthesia is a crossing of the senses that causes one sense, like sight, smell, or hearing, to be triggered by another separate sense. It's actually more common than a lot of people realize. Maybe not this room, I think maybe this room is aware, but it's 2 to 5% of the world are born with synesthesia, which is more common than being born with red hair, to put things into perspective. So in my life, improvisation and art, creativity has played a really big role. I was born with a sensory crossing of sound to colors, patterns, and textures. And growing up, this wasn't something that was really well understood. I was always a creative kid, loved music more deeply than anything, and just always wanted to show the people around me how beautiful it was to me in this multi-sensory capacity. But for me, I had a little bit of trouble finding my unique voice that way because it wasn't just automatically accepted and understood. And it wasn't until I was an adult, 24 years old, that I actually learned the name to my trait and was able to take an assessment, and started sharing my art a little more widely. And now I don't have a background in visual arts training, so everything I do is improvised. Today, as I'm listening to Carla and Olivia play their beautiful music, I'm just going to be painting the main themes that I see when I experience their music. And for me, this has been a real big journey to really just relax into improvisation and creativity, and to let myself have my own voice, which has felt like something I've needed to hide in the past. And so it's been very freeing for me, and I think most people can attest to the fact that when you start to be able to really lean into your own voice and just live in the moment authentically, your life opens up quite a lot, and I found this to be true for me. So as I paint today, for me, the colors tend to correlate with different notes, and then shapes and texture correlate often to the instrument and sort of the quality of the sound. So those will be the main things I'll be focusing on today. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to play a couple of pieces. Part of what we'll do is improvise in each of the pieces, and Sarah will paint. Then we'll take a little break and we'll finally get resolution to the story that Amy was telling, or at least the second half. And then we'll come back up and play 2 more pieces as Sarah finishes her artwork.
you. So we left our troubled village with an invitation to enter the story. But despite the storyteller's advice, enter the story, what even does that mean? The mayor was flustered and still did not know what to do. So the mayor left to ponder this problem and to seek the help of the wisest teacher in the town. I don't know what to do, said the mayor. Everything in the town has changed, everything is out of order, and everyone is upset. The mayor told the wise teacher all about the tigers and the mountain and the turtle at the breakfast table and about what the storyteller had said. The teacher pondered this for a moment and then asked a question. Why did you decide not to enter the story as the storyteller suggested? Well, the mayor wasn't expecting this question. I don't know, he said, or at least I don't think I know. It just didn't make sense at the time, and really, I guess I didn't know how. And then I got scared and angry, and I just didn't want to. And so the teacher asked, what would you do now if you could do it over? I'm not sure, the mayor said. I'm kind of still afraid, though I don't know what I'm afraid of. Okay, said the teacher. New things can be unsettling, and most of us are a little reluctant to jump in or even to listen to new things at all, but it can be really useful to look at things in new ways. We learn new things, and we can sometimes have a lot of fun in the process. But, said the mayor, it's not easy. After all, how do we know we're going to like how the story ends? And the teacher said with all the gentleness in the world, well, we don't. All we can do is decide if we are willing to learn something new and try. When a story shows up in our town or on our doorstep, it's an invitation to become part of a beautiful dance as each of us becomes both creators of the stories and receivers of wisdom. But we can't be either creators of stories or receivers of wisdom without first deciding to enter the story. And the mayor thought about it for some more time and decided that maybe the teacher was right and he ought to go back to the storyteller and find out how to enter the story after all. And that's the end.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What an experience. Very cool. Thank you so much. So, Sarah has really graciously agreed to donate this to the church, and it will be displayed in the lobby in the atrium for a while. Thank you, and auctioned off at the auction in the fall. And if you'd like to learn more about Sarah's art in the e-news this week, there's a website, and she lives in Minneapolis, and her studio is there. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes to this, and that you both said yes. And it's actually it's a two-part series on improvisation. So 2 weeks from today, Reverend Ashley Horan will do a sermon called A Theology of Improvisation. And she'll specifically talk about improvisation and social justice. And she is the person that is in charge of the UU Association's Side with Love Justice campaign. So we look forward to that as well. Thank you. And so our closing hymn today is number 1020, Woyoya. It's in the small teal hymnal. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing.
Please join me in the unison closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.